Welcome back to the Teacher's AI Cafe. I'm Kane, a teacher and a parent who wants AI to give us back our time. I share practical classroom-tested AI strategies to cut down your workload, improve your feedback and reduce stress so you can get your evenings back and be more present with your friends and family. No jargon, just actionable steps. Grab your mug. Now let's get going. I'd like to welcome everyone today. I've got a very special guest. I've got David here coming in from Boston, Massachusetts in the US. And welcome, David.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
No, it's good. Before we get started, can you give us a bit of your context and your background?
Yeah, of course. I've been teaching high school juniors and seniors. So I think for your audience, that would be year 11 and year 12 students.
So that's our senior school.
For senior school, exactly. Yes, for around 20 years. And I teach U.S. history, American history, Latin American history, government, American government, and journalism. I advise the school's online student news site. So that's about me in a nutshell. And I try to vary it up with what I'm doing and how I'm teaching.
Yeah, that's a bit different. Yeah, because our high schools are 7 to 12. So 7 there are probably 12, 13 years old. They come into our high school system and they stay there till usually most of them are about 18 nowadays by the time they graduate. What's that, 6 years?
Yeah.
A lot of your areas have got a middle school sort of arrangement. Call it middle school, call it junior middle school, but it's all within the high school, one sort of campus. And they all interact with each other to a certain degree. So some schools have different areas. Some, like my old school, everyone just walked wherever they wanted. And it was a good thing because I guess behaviour-wise, you got the year 12s kept the year 7s and 8s in line sort of thing. You had a hierarchy of size, though occasionally you get these year 7s want to try and pick on a year 12 and beat them up. It's you look at them, the year 12, they go away. But yes, it's quite a different model, which is, I don't know whether it's good or bad. My kids went to a middle school. Yeah. They did one here. They've just changed it. But the problem with the middle schools here is you never get to teach what we call ATAR or your AP sort of courses, your senior school. So I don't think they ever got the best teachers because they were stuck. They couldn't teach those senior school subjects. So you wouldn't get the best teachers go to this middle school type arrangement because your career was limited in terms of the options you could do. Different sort of model. But they're very rare, those schools. Although my daughter's schools are just senior schools, just year 11 and 12. They got a special campus and they treat them like adults and they get Wednesdays off. So they only go to school 4 days a week and
oh, wow.
Yeah. Wednesdays, they're meant to do where students go out and do workplace learning, or they go to TAFE, which is an external tertiary education. They go there 1 day a week sort of thing. The idea is they cram it into 4 days and they get Wednesdays off, which she likes. So
that's great. I like that. I wish that were true here.
Yes. Yeah. All the schools here wish we do it because they all have their staff meetings Wednesday morning and then go home. So you don't have to do after school touches to school meetings. So it's nice. Cool. So history, I'm a history teacher by one of my specialties, which is fantastic. Yes. I think it's good. And I saw on your video, Gator use a bit of technology, I think podcasting with you, which is, I think, is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
So what we're here is talking about the focus of EdTech and AI. But I guess in terms of technology, are you always been a tech sort of teacher or has that changed over time and you always been comfortable with technology?
Yeah, no, I think I feel comfortable with technology. I think for really all my life. I like trying out new things. I like exploring to see what's out there. And it kind of comes naturally to me. I help the students design the website, the student news site. That's a whole lot of fun as well. And I want to be clear from the start, I'm not a Luddite. I'm certainly not anti-tech. I'm just pro-learning is where I want to put more of my focus.
Yes, I think tech, I was in IT before I became a teacher. Didn't want to teach computing because I loved history. You can argue points. It's very subjective. And that's, I think, engagement with students, and by talking, we learn a lot. But yeah, and I guess I was looking at your online thing, you look at a lot of teach the analog first, and then obviously use some digital tools. And I don't disagree with that because I think even with AI and things, the expert or content-rich people with lots of really good content knowledge use AI much better than people who don't. So I think that's important.
Yeah.
So I guess, and I will add, in our senior school, we don't use that much technology. Most of our technology or tech's used in that middle school sort of space because obviously engagement, you've got more flexibility. Senior school, it's very regimented going through. I guess, say about you think best learning is analog, looking at your information. So what parts how do you divide it up? How do you think about it in your classroom and your practice, your analog versus the digital?
Yeah. So I always try to work down from technology. And that's a phrase I borrowed from Dr. Jared Horvath, the author of Digital Delusion, which is one of the most influential books I've read in the past however many years. I really prefer seeing students' faces rather than having them look at a screen. So we start every meeting either starts as a discussion, a gallery walk where I have different stations throughout the classroom, or maybe even throughout the school to get them moving a little bit or interacting with each other. I am not a fan of having students bring in digital copies of books. All the materials that we read, I shouldn't say all, but the vast majority are either in book form or I print them out. I know that's an environmental cost, but it's one that I think is worthwhile. And I'm also in favor of group work, anything to get students working together. Then after they've shown mastery of a skill or concept or both, that's when, if I think it would be of some usefulness, that's when I introduce technology. I might use something as simple as Kahoot for review or students. In some cases, when I'm teaching AP government, US government, students might interact with a chatbot that I've created, so to speak, vibe coded, so that students can interact with that. But even then, it's something that's always supervised so that I can see how they interact with the technology. And I also want to make sure that the AI, in this case, the LLM, is feeding out accurate, helpful information.
Yes. So you do use AI in your classroom? Context, in our state schools, we're not allowed to use students with AI. They're not allowed to have access to it at all. In our public system, they can in the private, because obviously we're public and private schools, high schools here.
Yeah.
So they have free reign because they're private. They can do what they want. So when you say, do you use, and I'd like to use my students to learn AI, and because I want them to learn how to use it effectively, going down the track, we're not allowed to do that. So how do you, when you, I was LM, do you have the students use AI in any other form in the classroom?
Not really. I mean, so right now my students are writing a history paper, a 5 to 7 page paper, and there will be a time throughout the writing and editing process where they will use a program called Flint AI, which is, it's an LLM that my school buys, but then I can see how the students interact with it and what the system itself, Flint AI, is telling students to do or what changes they can make. But honestly, that's even more work for me because I need to then check to make sure that what the AI is telling them is something I actually want them to do to begin with. So it's actually creating more work for me, even as I think it models for students how I'm critical of AI output. So it doesn't make my life easier. It actually makes it more challenging. But if it helps them see how they should question AI, then I guess I'm for it.
Yeah. Okay. So we don't have anything like that. Just having a look at Flint AI. So what sort of feedback does it give them? I guess in a history context, do they?
Yeah. You could vibe code it to criticize anything from the sources the students use to the writing itself, to the structure of the essay, to spelling and grammar, as simple as that. Yeah, but I don't think that it's vital. It's certainly not revolutionary. And I don't know how much is added by having students interact with it. It's something that I'm still cautious about, but I feel like when I do at least something.
Yeah. I see my daughter's doing equivalent AP, it's called ATAR, modern history. And I taught her last year. So she used it, and like our public school, she doesn't use it. But she's got my account and she's got her own little project in there. So I'll get your thoughts on, so what I got to do, she writes her draft, so she knows a general topic, whatever she's going to be. I think her next one's coming up, starting from 2019's Rise to Power, basically, consolidation of power. So what she does, she writes her draft, and then she uploads her draft and her marking criteria, and then runs AI to check against her marking key, because we hand those out to the students prior to the essay, and then gets feedback. So she asks us to look for gaps and things she may have missed in her draft. Do you get your students, is that a good use of AI for students? Or often then she'll go back to her teacher and say, look, I've made these adjustments, part of the process, but she's getting this feedback that she can't get because her teacher isn't obviously at home with her. And it's not telling you to write the essay. It's telling you to, oh, you've missed this gap. According to the marking criteria, you've got a weak argument here or whatever. So it's giving that sort of feedback to it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not, look, I think
Yeah.
at the center of all of this should be the teacher, and the teacher knows best based on what they're teaching and how they're teaching it. So I guess if it's okay with the teacher, for me, I would be a little weary.
Yeah.
I would want to know what LLM the student is using. And I would want to ask them to what extent were they critical of what that system, that platform turned out, because they're far from perfect. Right?
Oh, no. Yeah.
And I understand that some feedback's better than no feedback, but if that feedback is cruddy to begin with, then the student's revising her paper and making it even worse than it would have been otherwise.
Oh.
So yeah, I like the idea of a teacher sharing a rubric beforehand,
Yes.
but yeah, I would be weary of that.
No.
I'm wary of students using AI at all that's not directly supervised by me.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Going home. Yep.
Yeah.
It seems to work well for her. She normally comes and asks me, said, look, these are the justices. I give my feedback. She's
Yeah.
got that advantage at home. She doesn't really do it for too
Yeah.
many other subjects, though, but she does do it for the history. Showed her the process. But she also uses it to build her flashcards and things much faster because she handwrites everything. She handwrites everything, all her notes, and then comes home, scans it, transcribes it, and then can modify it. So I said it's more of a review type tool, and obviously not doing the work for him. Yeah.
I think using like Notebook LM or something like that, you put your notes in. I think that's a great use of AI if you want to use that for review after you've mastered something.
Yes.
I think that's a great use of it. I don't think you need to ask the teacher if that's okay. Go for it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. So, that's cool. What was I thinking about?
Yes.
I did a bit of research to the book on the digital delusion. So do you see any problems with these arguments of thoughts coming out? I've watched a couple of YouTube videos and I don't really know the gentleman. Obviously, his background is cognitive science. I think that's really important. Cognitive load is what obviously we base our teaching around. Do you see any, I guess, your view, arguments for and against of what he's actually promoted?
Yeah, I know what his critics say. We could touch upon that in a moment.
Yeah.
But I really not only found his book so affirming, but the science behind it, I think, is irrefutable. I think it's here in the US, more states now than not have at least a partial ban on cell phones or smartphones.
Yeah.
And I think that's great. And I think it should be extended to any type of screens. There's so much research coming out of the States now about how screens of any kind after X amount of hours are correlated not only to lower overall academic achievement, but serious impediments to social, emotional learning and growth. And I think if we're having students constantly look at screens in the classroom, we need to question to what extent are we as educators, at least here in the States, a part of that problem. But his critics, Dr. Horvath's critics, often say he's confusing causation with correlation.
And I did look at one of his video and he said he's still doing research on that. I think it was the one before, I guess, the Senate or Congress, whatever. I watched those videos. And he did mention that he's got some evidence, but obviously it's not conclusive. And funny, I saw that clip. It got shared everywhere, that clip of AI reducing IQ, which Fred and I, as another teacher, we question that because I know a study, which is quite interesting. The Danish actually started logging declining IQs because they measure all their conscripts come in. They give them an IQ test at part of their national service or the conscription. And they found IQs were declining from 1999. So there's other issues obviously going out. I think they'll decline over the next year. They climb back to what they were in the early 90s over the next 10 years, which is before people look at technology, before the iPhone, or we always had screens and computers. I'm Gen X, so I grew up with it. But I just find some of the argument, but I find it quite interesting. But obviously the social thing is important. Our schools, they're all banned. They're not allowed to have any mobile phones.
I love it.
So different schools have different things. My current one, if you get your phone out, it's taken, goes to the principal, then the parents have got to come pick it up. And they've got to explain to them, and it makes it really inconvenient so the kids don't get them out, so they don't use it. And I think that's a really good thing. My old school, you could take it out under teacher direction, which is really good for me. If I want to do a Kahoot, the kids, if they didn't have a laptop, my school was a one-to-one laptop, but not everyone had one. You could get your phone out, you could do your Kahoot on your phone. I found that really useful. My current school, I can't do that. I have to go into a computer lab, so you don't use much that sort of tech. But I agree. So all the mobile phones, and that's pretty much Australia. And we've now brought in our social media ban in Australia. Anyone under 16 can't go on social media.
I was going to say, I heard about that. Yeah, I think that's marvelous. I think, yeah, your education system it is better than ours, I think.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
No, I think your system is a lot more cognizant of the harm that screens
Yeah.
cause, especially young people and young teen girls in particular, both boys too, but girls especially. We have a lot of work to do here on that in the States. A lot of work.
Yeah, I agree.
The
Yeah.
problem is, in the States, education is run by the states, not by the federal government.
Oh, it is as well here. So that's a federal law. That was
Yeah.
school or not, you can't go on social media. But we've got the six. Every state has their own system. We have a national curriculum, which is, I think, your Common Core.
Yeah.
Everyone does. Like history, everyone does these basic things. When they implement the states differently, but we've only got 6 states. That's the difference. So it's easier for them to coordinate. They can all get in a room together and have a chat.
Say 6 versus 50. Yeah.
Yeah. And we are different. They're all run by the education department because, we don't have school boards. And we have a school board for the school, but they just write the business plan for the school. And that's usually objectives. We want to improve literacy, whatever the case may be. It's not like they don't mandate really any curriculum. That's done by the actual government itself. So it's a much easier system. And people complain about our system as well, but I think it's easier.
No system is perfect.
I guess I'll move on the question. And so you do meet. How have you used AI yourself? So obviously you've got LLM. So how are you using AI? And my focus really is more teacher use and ideally, hopefully making it life easier for us, hopefully. So how have you engaged with AI?
Yeah. So I just want to say, I think there's a big difference between AI for students and AI for teachers.
Yes.
Like night and day difference. I often think of it like, let's say it's like a teenager learning to drive for the first time, but has never had any lessons. They don't know where the potholes are, or you call them dust.
Potholes.
Potholes.
Yeah.
Bubbles.
Potholes, yeah.
Well, they don't know where the potholes are or what they look like, or even how to avoid them because they don't know what they look like. But experienced drivers do, right? Like we know where the potholes are likely to be.
Yeah.
We know where they are and how to avoid them. So I have no real issue with teachers using AI to make their jobs better.
Yes.
So long as they're transparent with the students about that and why they're making those decisions. I think if teachers want to use AI to create questions or variations of tests, I think that's a great use of it. If teachers even want to use it to provide feedback, look, I'm lucky. I teach at a private school where I have 40 juniors. I teach government, has 15 students in it, and my other class, journalism, has 20 students in it. I can afford not to use AI to give most of my feedback, but I understand for teachers that have 100, 150 students, maybe they need to lean more into it. I think I understand that and I empathize with that. And I think you got to do what you got to do to help your students learn the best they can. Just so long as you are assessing what that AI is turning out.
Interesting feedback. I see that a lot of questions on the boards. It comes up all the time, and I always argue no. I don't know. I see your comments every now and then. I always argue no because you need teacher direction. The feedback's quite different. And I mean, I've taught 7-12, but sometimes I'll have 108 students, whatever, a year, whatever, because across 5 classes, whatever the case may be. But I don't see that because feedback is quite different. I could see use if you get all your feedback and then you, create a sort of data based on all your different feedback. You could feed in and give it overall class, but you tend to do that anyway because you've been teaching long enough. You're pretty much, okay, these are the most common mistakes. And then you do that with a whole class review and then you do your individual ones. Where I find it really useful for me is I dictate to ChatGPT. I don't put the student name in there. I just dictate and then it does it in a nice, beautiful format for me. And I find that much easier nowadays is my thoughts, I can dump it into it and then it cleans it up and does it for me. And my feedback is more accurate because I'll be going through a paper, just talking about all the different questions and things. Whereas before, it's it, and I've got terrible handwriting. My students can't read my handwriting.
Me too.
And I write in the board and the students, so what does it say? What does it say? They don't call me, occasionally they call me, usually it's Mister. And they can't read on the board. So and writing individual comments, things up and down takes a lot of time, especially if you're doing your AP sort of classes. So doing verbal, I find that's really good use of it. It's not really AI though. It's just sorting it out for me.
Yeah.
going through. But yeah, I don't
Yeah.
think feedback is good at this stage. And I see the question, you'd have to be so explicit with your constraints around feedback to actually
Yeah.
give good, accurate feedback to a student, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm with you. And then it's even more work to make sure the feedback it has produced is that you want the student to actually act.
Yes.
Yeah. The one program that I do quite a lot is called Code Reader.
Yeah.
I've actually done some work with them. I like how they have rubrics that you can use and you can manipulate. And if you want to, you can put in like your own thoughts about how papers or responses should be created. But it's not perfect yet. And even then, you still have to make sure that, again, its output is what you want it to be. But again, I think if teachers are transparent and students are on board with it and understand that difference between where they're at and their academic careers and where teachers are at as professionals, I think if that line's made clear, I'm all for AI making teaching more effective for teachers.
Yes.
Or spinning things up. Yeah.
I think some of the stuff I know,
Yeah.
early school, my son's school, I think they just pumped out. It was horrible. They used Diffit. You would have heard of Diffit. And also looked at all these worksheets. They were just Diffit sheets. Literally, the teacher just put the information in there, hit Diffit, create, and handed them out. They were absolutely horrible. And the structure and everything was really terrible. But that was just being the teachers being, I won't say lazy, or just taking shortcuts basically with their content. And we're using AI, we're putting in the Diffit and differentiating it, but the output wasn't very effective and very useful. This was for a middle school type arrangement.
You can't take out the human elements. It's students feel that you are not involved sufficiently as an individual in being a gatekeeper. If you're using AI, then they're going to not try as much. They're going to resist because they feel right there wrongly. If you didn't invest in this, why should I? And there are studies now coming out about that. Like AI might be effective in creating assessments or differentiating different assessments and learning.
Yes.
But if the human element is missing there, if there's no buy-in from the students, that actually could lead to negative results.
Interesting you say that. I was giving a PowerPoint. It was my year 8s. And in the quote, the student said, "Sir, is this your PowerPoint?" Well, it wasn't my PowerPoint. It was from a colleague she used in her class. We obviously share resources. And no, it's missed. But it's interesting. The comment, they wanted to know whether I made this PowerPoint or what we're going through, or whether someone else did, which was fine. I've never really had that before. Most students just, okay, yeah, we'll get on with it. Thinking that going through. But yeah, I think, that ownership, they want you to actually be invested in what you're actually teaching them, engaging with them and providing what they actually need. And I think if you're just grabbing things off the shelf, so to say, it probably don't feel that's the best thing. I sell on TPT, so I wonder what people think when they say, because I put my copyright, my thing on the bottom of every page, sort of thing.
Teachers.
Yeah. So I obviously sell stuff on that. About half my customers are in the US. And I think they're mainly middle school that sort of buy it. So all Nazi Germany and American history and things like that. But I find the US very confusing. I tried to look at some curriculum I was developing, because we're very similar in a lot of the topics, but it was so diverse and every state was so different. So it did me head in. I gave up in the end. I just changed what I do and make things which sound interesting. But I wonder, because people see these worksheets. I don't know what's common in the US, that they get worksheets from lots of different companies, obviously commercial and obviously by their own. Is that a normal thing that goes through the US school systems in terms of that sort of engagement of students saying, "Oh, you bought this online"?
Yeah. Yes. Now with textbook companies, they often come with teacher resources and online resources and PowerPoints and online quizzes and things like that. I think students to a certain extent expect that.
Okay.
And we could talk for hours about my issues with textbook companies. We won't do that.
Yeah.
But I think students want to see teacher created work.
Yeah.
So they know that we're invested in what we're doing and we know what we're doing and we know how to present information to them. But at the same time, I think we have, as teachers, a different calculus and different responsibilities than students. So if we want to use any resource that we think will help get the job done, so long as that human connection is still there, I'm okay with it.
Just moving on AI. Now, in terms of education, is there actual formal training with AI, at least in your schooling or in systems or districts over there? Or was it more teachers are left to their own devices?
Yeah. So it depends on where you're at, public, private, what district you're at, city, town. We've gotten at my school quite a lot of PD on AI
Okay.
to the point where most teachers are like, enough already. Let's talk about something else.
Yep.
And today, actually, earlier today, I was at an AI conference at another private school, even on the weekend. So there is, but in my circle, I think there's a lot of, how should I put this? There's teachers feel that there's a divide between, and this is my terminology, between embedded authority, what teachers think about AI,
Yes.
and then extracted authority about why is it only once people leave the classroom that their opinions seem to matter more, and that those kinds of people are leading the PDs. It's not like they don't have a voice consultants, for instance. It's not like they shouldn't have a place at the table. I think everyone should. Parents, admins, teachers, retired teachers, everyone should. But I think the best PD I've gotten about AI is not from extracted authority from those outside the classroom. It's from people actually inside the classroom. And it frustrates me to no end. I really wish that, and this is here in the US at least, teachers are not trusted to make larger curricular pedagogical decisions. It's admins, it's parents, it's consultants that haven't been in the classroom in 10, 20 years. And they're the ones that are leading PD. It's just, it's very frustrating.
Yeah.
And to be frank, it's a bit demoralizing as well too. But in terms of PD, I think my school's done a great job overall. I just wish more of it were teacher-centric, teacher-focused, and teacher-led.
Yeah, well, most of our stuff we do internally when we do PD. We occasionally get people in to talk, but it's very rare. It's usually organised internally. But we do have, in WA say we don't have control because the curriculum is set. But as I say to them, all the other teachers, it's how we assess determines how we teach. So my argument is if we get the assessments right, then you let the teachers do whatever they want. And most schools, my experience, I've only been at 3 schools. I'm a late term teacher. I just didn't start teaching until I was 40. So I've been at one school, as a foundation school. I wrote the curriculum and everything. So we had the state curriculum, but I wrote how we would implement. And that's what we got. And how I did in my classroom is different to the teacher does next door. So we have freedom what we do. And then obviously we have, but we all have common assessments. So we do 2 a term. We all do the same assessments, but we teach it however we want to achieve that assessment. So we have control, and I would write all the programs, the history programs. Senior school, even ATAR, which is your AP, I would have the program. We have the exam at the end of the year, but I would decide how I'd teach to make sure I cover all the content and the skills over the 2 years. That's not the case here. Yeah.
At the private schools, we can do what we want, but in the public schools, that's not the case. They have to teach certain things a certain way.
No, we get total freedom how to do it. And hence why teachers, I go to history conferences, I present to teachers, and I'm at things around EdTech, how you can use tech within that history context. But yeah, we all learn from each other. And I agree with you. The best teaching or learning is done with teachers to each other in the same department. And I find that's when people ask me about AI, do we teach them all this? No, I teach them the basics. So I run a lot. We've got one come up PD, AI and PD. But I teach them all the basics and then let them go away and explore and find out what to do. And usually the best, or any tech or anything, you get the teacher comes, we'll go into the department and go, I just had the best lesson. And the other teachers say, what'd you do? And they say, they did this. And whatever it's tech or non-tech, whatever the case may be. Other teachers, can you give me that? And I'll try that. And that's how it works with ours. So the idea is the teachers will come, I had a fantastic lesson. They'll talk about it. And the other teachers then picked it up. And then soon all the teachers will be doing it. We had a thing, what was it? It was cool. I call it drudge ball. It's a revision activity. It's based on like Survive. You watch Survive where you knock things out, knock out the other team. The idea is, you do a quiz and they all have whiteboards and they do questions. If they get it right, they got to throw a bit of paper into a bin. If they get in the bin, they can take a life off another group. So it's the old Survivor game they used to do where they knocked out the tiles and they took life off other players. So it's based on that. And one teacher did it, and within a week and a half, the whole school was doing it. And straight away, all the students knew how to do it because all the teachers picked up and thought this is a really fun revision activity. And that's how I find it, at least in our schools, that's how it worked. One teacher will do something and they just straight through osmosis.
I love that. They treat you as professionals, and you can have little laboratories of experiments from the people that know best about teaching and learning. I love that. That's not the case here at most public schools.
Okay.
Private school, yes, not public. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, that's normal state school. And that's always been my experience around things. So when I run PD, like I said, it's usually I've got one company, a big conference of 5 schools, and I run a session AI. Someone else is running a session AI. Some people doing one on dogs, like anxiety dogs, whatever. People just, they ask, what do you want to run PD on? And people have just nominated. There's one of non-conventional English ATAR and things, like one of our head of department for English. But yeah, we tend to have lots of freedom. But I've heard of some private schools in WA in the past, they'd go in, there'd be a worksheet waiting for them in their pigeonhole, and that's what they had to teach that day. I've heard that experience as well in some private schools here. I think public schools, they just don't have the resources to be that pedantic.
Yeah. It's interesting. It's really interesting to see the similarities and differences between the education systems.
Yeah. The only difference here, we get a lot of low-cost private. Biggest difference between teaching private and public here, and our public schools are pretty, is that you get a lot more demanding parents in the public system, and that's what they warn you about. You'll have parents ringing up by why they'll argue points and things like that with the public system.
In the public system?
No, in the private. Public system, no, usually they're pretty, it depends on the school. My kids, we always go to every parent thing. I put my kids through, we go to meetings, but you always only ever see the parents that you don't need to see because the kids put the effort in. They got the right idea, but the ones that struggle, they don't. I've got one question for you. Do you guys, I hear about grade inflation. Do you guys allow your students to fail? I hear this, and I hear bits and pieces. And when I was in the US, I looked at my niece's work, and she's in equivalent to year 9 now this year. And I found her work was really basic. And I do wonder because, without being mean to her, she was a C student here in Australia. And she's gone to the US, and she's a high A student.
Grade inflation is a major problem. Passing students that shouldn't be passed is a major problem. In charter schools here, in publics, in privates, there's a lot of pressure to just pass students through.
Yeah.
Most of that, and I'm speaking anecdotally, not scientifically, but most of that seems to come again from outside the classroom, from the powers that be, so to speak. But in the news, every now and then, you'll see a story about a student suing their school district because although they graduated, they're reading at a first grade level.
Yep.
And so then they're upset. Yes. It's
we get those reports that come through sort of social media and everything. They get shared everywhere. Unfortunately, it seems that David has dropped off before we finished our interview. I'm recording this because we may not get him back because he hasn't reconnected at this point. I would like to thank David, and I will contact him outside this recording for the chat today. I think it was really interesting getting perspectives from someone from literally on the other side of the world from me, over in Boston and me in Little Perth, Australia, about different education systems, about the differences as well as the similarities and why AI is important for teachers. It's important how we think about them within the broader educational context. And I do agree with a lot of his argument that we do need to think about who controls the discussion and the narrative around the use of educational tools. It should always come back to the teacher who has the final say of how tools are implemented or used within their classroom to suit their particular context, because we are all professionals. Hope you found this podcast really useful. And if you're interested in coming on and have a chat, please let me know. I look forward to all the different ideas and opinions. Till next time, look after yourself, keep up the good work, keep experimenting, and take care of yourself.